Hey guys. Well, at least I see two people in here, so it's a success as it is. We have to remember, Ron and Linda, that the Bible tells us that where two or more are gathered in my name, I'll be in their midst. So we've achieved that minimum goal. So we're not going to tarry too long before I go ahead and get into today's study. Uh, Before I get started, as always, even though there's only a couple of us in here, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I don't want to waste any time on just frivolous talk. But it is good to see both of y'all in here. I can always count on y'all. I'm showing 3 in here now, so that's great. But in Timothy 2:15, the Bible tells us to study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman worthy. Let me redo that. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. I need to start reading a little more and reciting a little less, I guess. But with that, we're gonna ask our Lord to bless this today. Lord, bless us as we go forward. Lord, let us have eyes to see and ears to hear and understand. Lord, let us go through this, Lord, and let it be a blessing to all of us here. Let me not lead anyone astray. In Jesus' name, I pray these things. Amen. So we're going to get started way back over here in the book of Genesis again. And Ron, I was looking at it, my last Bible study, and I believe I got all the way to chapter 31 last time. That's why I went over. But we need to look back for just a minute, and we need to remember what we heard last time so that we're up to par on everything and we're not forgetting anybody. We have to remember that Jacob married Rachel during that time. And then he has to serve Laban, Rachel's father. But he also has another daughter, an older daughter named Leah. Well, what happened was Joseph thought that he was going to serve Laban, the father of the women. He was going to serve him for 7 years for Rebekah. But after he served that 7 years, he found out that when it came time to get married, that it was Leah that was given to him and not Rachel, her sister, her older sister. Because and then Laban, he was using his con job. And so he says, no, he said, you got to marry the oldest one first. And then you have to go through the marriage week. That's the week right after the marriage, to where the husband and wife pretty much just spend a week together. And they have all kinds of celebrations and all that for the bride. Well, so then Laban, the father, says, well, okay, serve 7 more years and I'll let you have Rachel. So after the wedding week, he gave Rachel to Jacob, and he married her, and he served another 7 years. So now he served 14 years with Laban for his 2 wives. And now since he's been there, Laban's flocks and Laban's money and everything else and wealth has increased because of Jacob. So when he gets ready to leave, remember, he took all of the blemished livestock. By that I mean they weren't pure white. They were spotted or striped or something else other than white. So he got all of those, which accounted to most of Laban's flock. And so that's where we got with him. And then Leah has children. Takes a while for Rachel to have any children. But then Rachel actually does get pregnant, and she bears Joseph. I know you have to remember now, from Jacob is where the 12 tribes came from, the 12 brothers. And then Jacob, as he increased, he left Laban. And then Laban chased him down. And then he just flat told him, I worked 7 years for one daughter, 7 years for the youngest daughter, and then I worked another 6 years for the flocks that I took. See, he didn't ask permission from Laban to leave, so Laban's all mad. But anyway, they made a covenant between them. And that's where we're at now. Actually, I think I went over just a little bit. So what we're going to talk about is chapter 31. And he heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and all of that which our fathers hath. He had gotten all of this glory. So here you see here he has ran off. He's took his 2 wives, and he's took their maidservants and his men servants and all of the livestock that he had acquired from Laban, who was Leah and Rachel's father. Remember, he had to marry Leah because she was the oldest, and then he married Rachel. He served 20 years for Laban. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. So you see, he knows now that after he's done all this 20 years of service, that Laban has now turned on him. He's not treating him like he used to. The countenance has changed with Laban. He's not looking at Jacob like he used to. He's not acting like a father-in-law that cares about his son. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. This is the same promise that God had made Jacob's forefathers, Isaac and Abraham. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock. So he called them out to where his sheep were. I guess he was wanting to get out there away from everybody, and he wanted to talk to them in private. And he said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before, but the God of my father hath been with me. So now he's going to tell them what God said. And you know that with all of my power I served your father, and your father hath deceived me, and changed my wages 10 times. But God suffered him not to hurt me. He says, yeah, your father, he made me serve him for 20 years. He conned me into marrying the older daughter, then serving another 7 for Rachel, and then another 6 for the blemished of the flocks. But he never laid a hand on him. He never hurt him. But he knew that everything had changed between them. If he said thus, the speckled shall be thy wages, which he did, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, the ring streaked shall be thy hire, then bear all cattle ring streaked. Okay, that's what I was just talking about. He made a deal with Laban that he would only take the blemished of the livestock, be it the cattle or the goats or the sheep, whatever it was. And he said, thus hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. That just confirms what I just said. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, and I lifted up my eyes, and I saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which slept upon the cattle were ring-streaked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, here am I. And he said, lift up now thine eyes, and see, all the rams which sleep upon the cattle are ring-streaked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban hath done unto thee. So you see, now he's being visited by an angel in a dream or a vision, whatever you want to think of it as. But he's telling him that in that vision that those in the flock that he has taken are going to multiply, and they're going to be a blessing. And he says, I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest a vow unto me. Now arise and get thee out from this land, and return into the land of thy kindred. So he's telling him right here that he's the God of Bethel, where he anointed the pillar. That's where he built that altar, and he made a vow unto God. And so now God's calling him on that vow. And he's telling him to get thee from this land and return into the land of thy kindred. And you have to remember, the land of thy kindred is where Esau lives. Now, Esau was his brother, remember? Remember, Jacob pretty much stole his birthright. You know, he gave him a little bit of food for his birthright. And then he, along with his mother, Rebekah, they conned Isaac when he was old and blind into believing that Jacob was Esau. And thus he gave him the only blessing that a father has to give to a son in the Hebrew beliefs. And Jacob got it instead of the older son Esau. So now he's being told by the angel of God to go right back to where he fled many years ago for his life, because Esau was going to kill him. So now he's being told to go back to that same land. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, It is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? So now they're wanting to know, well, now, do we have any kind of inheritance coming from our father, as a dowry or anything like that? We are not counted of him strangers, for he hath sold us and hath quite devoured also our money. So what they're saying here is that, yeah, he did. He sold those women to Jacob. He sold them for 7 years of service to the father twice, 14 years. And then he served him another 6 for the blemish of the livestock. But they're talking about, for all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's now. And then whatsoever God hath said unto thee do. So he's saying, yeah, they're saying, if you want to leave, take us, let's run. We're with you, let's go. Because their father has done nothing but evil unto them. It said, and then Jacob rose up, and he set his sons and his wives upon camels. And he carried away all his cattle and all his goods, which he had gotten. The cattle of his getting, which he had gotten in Pandaram, and go to Isaac his father into the land of Canaan. So here we go. That just tells you exactly what I said. He's going back to the land of his father, which is Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. Now, just because Jacob married Rachel and Leah, did nothing for their father Laban. Their father Laban worshipped idols. And so these images that the daughters took were her father's idols, and he was very upset about that. And Jacob stole away unawares of Laban to the Syrian, in that he told him not that he had fled. So he left without telling anybody he was leaving. He just loaded up everything he had, and he was gone. And he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river and set his face toward Mount Gilead. You'll hear more about Mount Gilead as we go through here. And it was told Laban on the 3rd day that Jacob was fled. So Jacob had 3 days head start on the father Laban. But the problem is Jacob was taking all of his flock and all of his tents, everything he owned, he was taking with him. So he was moving slowly. He was in a caravan, to say the least. So it says that Laban, he took his brethren with him and pursued after him 7 days' journey, and they overtook him in Mount Gilead. See, they had went to Mount Gilead, and I guess they had laid over there to rest up and maybe feed the flock and do all that you need to do when you got that many people with you. So in 7 days' time, they overtook them. The father overtook Jacob and his 2 daughters. And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. So now, say he's being told in a vision or a dream that whatever you do, don't you do anything to Jacob. And, even uh, a idol worshiper, I guess when God talks to you, you listen. And then Laban overtook Jacob, and now Jacob had pitched his tents in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. So just like I said a minute ago, he was resting up when he was overtaken. And Laban said unto Jacob, what hast thou done, that thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives, taken with the sword? So he was asking him the question, that's you taking my daughters like this was like you took them by force. You stole them. But he didn't. And where didst thou flee away secretly and steal away from me, and didst not tell me that I might have sent thee away with mirth and with song and with tabret and with harp? So now he's saying, if you'd just told me that you wanted to leave, you could have left. No problem. I would have sent you away with myrrh, and myrrh was a very expensive item back then. If you'll remember, myrrh was one of the things that the three wise men took to Jesus. And they would have sang songs, and they would have had a party, and there would have been harp music and everybody dancing, and we would have sent you away happy. He never would have done that. But he's still saying, and thou hast suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters, and how hast thou done foolishly in so doing? It is in the power of my hand to do hurt you. But the God of your fathers spake unto me yesternight, saying, thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. And now, although thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longeth after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? Now he's accusing Jacob of stealing his images, the images of his God that he serves. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, peradventure thou wouldst take by force thy daughters from me. So this just reiterates what I said. Jacob took these women because he knew that Laban wasn't going to give him his best wishes and let him go away. He was going to try to keep Jacob there by keeping the daughters there. Because you have to remember that Laban prospered under Jacob. So with whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. So Jacob knew that he had ordered no one to steal these things. He knew that he hadn't done it, and he never dreamed that Rachel would have stolen these things. So he said, whoever you find that has these things, kill them. Let that be their punishment. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the two maidservants' tents, and he found them not. He's talking about the images. He didn't find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images, and she had put them in the camel's furniture that she sat upon them. And Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. So what she did, she's got a chair that's covered in camel skin, and she's put them under that, and she's sitting on them. And she said to her father, let it not displease my lord that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of woman is upon me. And he searched, but found not the images. So she told him, I'm pregnant. I need to sit. I need to rest. Don't make me get up, Father, forgive me, but let me sit. So he let her sit, and he didn't check her chair, and she still had him. And Jacob was wroth and chode with Laban. Means he had an argument, he blessed him out good. And Jacob answered and said unto Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin, that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? See, now the idols weren't found, so Laban's gods weren't there as far as Jacob knew. So now he's questioning him, why? Why did you do this? Why did you search all my stuff? It says, whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of thy household stuff. What have you found? You found nothing. Set it here before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge betwixt us. So see, Laban found nothing. So like Jacob's puffing his chest, and he's saying, yeah, take whatever you found and lay it right here on the ground in front of us, and let all our men, let all our people, mine and yours, let them be the judge and who's right or who's wrong. He said, this 20 years I have been with thee. This is Jacob talking to Laban. And he said, 20 years have I've been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she-goats hast not cast their young. The rams of thy flock I have not eaten. That which was torn of beast I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it. And of my hands didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. He's talking about if we lost some of the flock to wolves or predators, well, then Jacob was responsible. So it didn't matter if they were taken by day or by night. Jacob would still be responsible for the loss of any livestock. Thus I was in the day, the drought consumed me, and the frost by night. My sleep departed from my eyes. And thus I have been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle, and thou hast changed my wages 10 times. So you see, Jacob was there for 20 years, like I said, and he just told why he was there, for the daughters and for the livestock. But over the years, Laban had messed with his pay and had changed his wages 10 times. He said, except God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely thou hadst sent me away now empty. And he's telling him, don't lie to me, Laban. If you'd have sent us away, if I'd have told you I was going, you'd have sent me away empty. You'd have sent me away without my livestock, and you'd have sent me away without my wives and my maidservants and men servants. God hath seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. He's talking about Laban's dream. And Laban answered and said unto Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do unto thee, these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? So he's saying, okay, so everything here is mine, Jacob. Like it or not, it's all mine. But he says, what can I do about it? You know, what can I really do? He says, now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant. See, now he's backtracking. Now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant, I and thou, and let it be for a witness between thee and me, or me and thee. And Jacob took a stone and he set it up a pillar. Jacob's really good at setting up these pillars to mark certain events. And Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stones, and they took stones and they made a heap. And they did eat there upon the heap. And Laban called it, I'll never get this word right, Jagashadutha, but Jacob called it Gilead. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name it was called Gilead. And Mizpah, for he said, the Lord, which between me and thee, when we are absent from one another, if thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives besides my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt thee and me. He says, okay, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you take everything that you've got. But don't you ever take another wife other than the wives that you took from me as my daughters. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be a witness, and the pillar be a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee. And thou shalt not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. So there he is. He's saying, okay, we're making a truce here. I'm going to leave you alone. You're going to go. I'm going to go, but I won't come past this pillar and these heaps of stones that we've laid here. We're We will not, either one, go on the other side. This will be our barrier. You go your way, I go my way. Sort of like when Abraham told Lot, pick a side. I'll go the other direction. And that's what you have to do a lot of times. You have to separate yourself from evil people and those who don't believe as we believe. Sometimes you have to be a separated people. As a Christian, certainly we are a separated people. I mean, we get along with everyone, or try to, but they don't always get along with us. And the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judged betwixt us, and Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat bread, and they did eat bread, and tarried all night in the mount. And early in the morning Laban rose up and kissed his sons and his daughters, and he blessed them, and Laban departed and returned unto his place. So they had a big feast that night on the altar that Jacob had built. They had a burnt offering, and they ate, and they stayed all night, got up the next morning. And where he mentions Laban kissed his sons and daughters, the sons that he's talking about are the sons of his daughters. So it's actually his grandsons he's talking about. I don't believe any of Lee's brothers and Rachel's brothers went with them. I think the sons he's talking about are his grandchildren. And Jacob went on his way, and the angel of God met him. And when Jacob saw him, he said, this is God's host. And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. That's a tough one. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, unto the land of Seir, in the country of Edom. All right, so now we know that Esau is in front of Jacob, and Jacob's starting to worry. And he's thinking, okay, so now I'm going to go to the land of my fathers, the land of my kindred, and what is Esau going to do to me? I mean, just remember, he stole his birthright and everything else. And he commanded them, saying, thus ye shall speak unto my lord Esau. Thy servant Jacob say thus, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed there until now. I have oxen and asses and flocks and men servants and women servants. I have sent to tell my lord, may I find grace in thy sight. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to thy brother Esau, and he cometh to meet thee, 400 men with him. Okay, so Jacob sent his emissaries over into Edom to visit Esau. So when he gets over there, they're telling him, hey, Jacob's got all these flocks and stuff. He wants to give you a bunch of them. He wants to make amends. He wants to come back home. And so these emissaries return to Jacob, and all they know is that Esau and 400 men are heading that way. And so immediately what's going to go through everybody's mind? And it says, and Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that was with him, the flocks and the herds and the camels, into two bands. And he said, if Esau come to one company and smite it, then the other company which is left shall escape. So you see, now he's trying to say, okay, Esau's coming with 400 men. I don't have nowhere near that kind of manpower. I don't have an army. I have a bunch of herders. And here I am fixing to be set upon by 400 battle-hardened soldiers and my brother Esau. So what can I do? I'm going to separate my people. All right, he gets the heads of his men servants and people there, and he says, okay, y'all take this half, y'all take that half. Y'all go separate directions, and maybe he'll only kill one of you. Maybe that way one will survive. And so see that he was thinking survival. He wasn't thinking that anything good could come out of this. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord which saith unto me, return unto thy country and to thy kindred, and I will deal with thee well, or I will deal well with thee. So now he's asking God, he says, and you told me to come here and he's going to treat me good. He says, I'm scared. He said, I don't know what I want to do. He's freaking out. He says, I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies of all the truth which thou hast showed unto thy servant, for with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become two bands. So now he's telling God that I've crossed that river, and now I've had to separate my flocks and my people and my wives. I've had to send them in opposite directions, and hoping I can save just one. He says, deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he will come and smite me, and the mother with the children. See, he's really afraid. I would be too. I mean, he had stolen Esau's birthright, and he had also stolen his blessing from Isaac, their father. So Esau had every reason to be angry. You have to remember, Jacob fled from that land. That's how he wound up with Laban, Rachel's father, was because he was running from Esau. And now he's going back, and now Esau's coming to him. Thou sayest, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. There again, he's reminding God, you made me a promise that I was going to be the seed, just like his father and grandfather, Abraham and Isaac. Same promise that they received. And he lodged there that same night, and took of that which came to his hand a present for Esau, his brother, 200 she-goats and 20 he-goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams. So now Esau's pulled out 200 female goats, and she's pulled out 200 lambs, female lambs, and 20 goats and 20 rams. So now you have 200 of each, with 20 rams to breed them, so the flock will multiply. So really, he's given him much more than just livestock. He's given him something that's going to produce and grow over time to improve Esau's wealth and his might in that area. So 30 milk camels with their colts, 40 kine and 10 bulls, 20 she-asses and 10 foals. Here now he's given camels, he's given bovines, he's given cattle, and he's given asses with foals. So you see, it's he's really putting up a big lot of stuff here to get Esau not to come kill him. And he delivered them into the hands of his servant. Every drove by themselves, and said unto his servants, pass over before me, and put a space betwixt drove and drove. He's saying, okay, now don't just take them all at one time. He says, take the sheep, then the goats, then the asses, then the camels. So they're going to come in waves so that they don't all show up at one time. Because this way Esau can just keep seeing them coming, and he's thinking, Lord, when is this caravan of all this livestock going to end? And he commanded the foremost, saying, when Esau my brother meeteth thee, and ask thee, saying, where art thou? And whither goest thou? And whose are these before thee? Talking about the livestock. Then thou shalt they are thy servant Jacob's. It is a present sent unto my lord Esau, and behold, he is behind us. And so commanded he the second and the third, and all that followed the drove, saying, on this manner shall ye speak unto Esau when you find him. So that these servants are doing exactly what they were told by Jacob when they met Esau. And say ye moreover, behold, thy servant Jacob is behind us. For he said, I will appease him with a great present that goeth before me, and afterward I will see his face. Peradventure he will accept me. So now he's saying, he's brought you all of these things. They've come in droves. You've seen them all come in. It's a great number of animals. So he's waiting for you to come. And he was worried that he won't be accepted. So he went the present over before him, and himself lodged that night in the company. He rose up that night and he took his 2 wives and 2 women servants and his 11 sons and passed over the ford Jabbok. And he took them and sent them over the brook and sent them over that he had. And Jacob was left alone. So see, he sent his wife and his family and all that he had across the river again. And now he stayed on this side. And it said Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of day. So Jacob stayed alone. He went to sleep that night, and he had another vision or a dream. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. Well, literally what this means is Jacob actually had knocked his hip out of socket, and he was pretty much a cripple, but he continued to fight all night long. And he said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And he says, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. So Jacob was fighting. A lot of people say he was fighting with an angel. Some say he was fighting with Christ at that time. But he said, no, I'm not going to let you go. He held on. Remember how he held on to Esau's heel? He was trying to get out first. He was doing the same thing to this angel. He was holding on, even though he was injured and crippled and couldn't fight anymore. He wouldn't turn him loose. And the angel was saying, let me go. Day cometh. And I don't know what that has anything to do with, but that's what he said. And he says, no, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. So he said unto him, what is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince thou hast power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. And Jacob asked him and said, tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, wherefore is it that thou doest ask after my name? And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. So you see, he believed that he had actually been in the presence of God. And this was a major impact on his life. And he said he passed over Peniel, and the sun rose upon him, and he halted upon his thigh, which means he sat down. Therefore the children of Israel eat not of the sinew which shrank, which is upon the hollow of the thigh unto this day, because he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh, and in the sinew that shrank. That was how Jacob's hip got knocked out of socket. Evidently, this angel grabbed his thigh and tore the sinew and knocked it out of socket. And sinew is no more than just connective tissue that holds stuff together. So they were not to eat of that. And then Jacob finally meets Esau. And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau came, and with him 400 men. And he divided the children unto Leah and unto Rachel and unto the 2 handmaidens. And he put the handsome and their children foremost, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph hindermost. And he passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came to near his brother. See, Jacob was really repentive. Not only had he sent him all this livestock, when he saw him, he ran out and bowed down to him 7 times, which is a show of the utmost respect. I mean, we're not supposed to bow to anyone but to God. But here he was bowing to Esau. And Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him. Can you believe that? And they wept. And I'm going to tell you, that's something to cry over. I mean, here's 2 brothers. One has been done so terribly wrong, years ago by the other. And now he's embracing and kissing him. And he lifted up his eyes and he saw the women and the children. He said, who are those with thee? And he says, the children which God has graciously given thy servant. And then the handmaidens came near, they and their children, and they bowed themselves. Leah also, with her children came near and bowed themselves. And after Joseph near Rachel, they bowed themselves. And he said, he said, what meanest thou by all this drove which I met? And he says, these are to find grace in the sight of my Lord. So Esau asked him, why did you send all of those droves of livestock to meet me? Why did you do all that? And he says, I did it to find grace with you. And he's calling him his Lord. So he's really humbling himself to Esau. And Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep that thou hast unto thyself. He says, so don't send me anything. He says, what you've sent, take back. He said, I don't want it. I don't need it. I'm prosperous. I don't need what you want to give me. So I imagine this confused Jacob there for a minute or two. Okay, well, he don't want my flock. What does he want? And Jacob said, nay, I pray thee, if now I have found grace in thy sight, then receive my present at my hand, for therefore I have seen thy face, as though I had seen the face of God, and thou wast pleased with me. See, now he's bragging on Esau. He's trying to build Esau's, idea of himself up, his ego, saying that looking upon you is like looking upon a God, and you have found grace. You've given me grace, and I have pleased thee, like I would please my God the Father, which I think may be taken a little far. But here again, we're showing Jacob was not one for an argument. He was just glad that Esau hadn't killed him. And he said, let us take our journey and let us go, and I will go before thee. And he said to him, my Lord knoweth that the children are tender, and the flocks and the herds are young are with me. And if men should drive them one day, all of the flocks will die. So he's saying, don't pressure me to go with you, because you travel so much faster than I do. There's no way we can keep up. If we do, our flocks are going to die. The babes aren't going to make it, and our flocks are going to be diminished. And he says, let my Lord, I pray thee, pass over before this servant, and I will lead on softly, according as the cattle that goeth before me, and the children be able to endure, until I come unto my Lord, unto Seir. So he's saying that don't drive us there, like driving animals. He says, let the cattle set the pace. Let's put the cattle out front, and we'll drive the cattle at their pace. And he had many children with him, so he had to also go at a pace that was okay for them. So they didn't die along the journey, because it was a long trip across the Middle East to get to where he was going in Seir. And Esau said, let me now leave thee with some of the folk that are with me. And he said, what needeth it? Let me find grace in the sight, my Lord. So Esau's saying, okay, we'll let you do that, but I'm going to leave some of my 400 men here with you. And Jacob's saying, why? We don't need it. You don't have to do that. Why are you doing that? Let me find grace in thy sight, my Lord, is what he said. And so Esau returned that day and went on to Seir. So it didn't say if Esau left his men there or not. It left us sort of hanging on that. I take it that Esau went along with Jacob and he took his men with him, but it doesn't say that there. And it said, because Esau returned that day on his way to Seir, and Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built him a house and made booths for his cattle. Therefore, the name of this place is called Succoth. And Jacob came to Shalem, a city of Shechem. Jacob came to Shechem, to Shalem, a city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from the Pandararam and pitched his tent before the city. And he bought a parcel of a field where he had spread his tent at the hand of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. And he erected there an altar, and he called it El Echole Israel. And so that's pretty awesome. Um, he's went all the way back, but it's sort of confusing me a little bit uh, because he said that he was going to be coming unto Esau as fast as the cattle could be driven there. And now it says that when he got to Shalem, it was a city of Shechem and in Canaan, and here he built a house. So I don't think he's moving very quickly. We've got a few more minutes here. I'll just touch on this right quick. Come on, I can't get my fingers to work. There we go. Let my fingers. No, we've got about 14 minutes. So I don't want to get too deep into another chapter and not be able to finish it or run over. And today's been a hectic morning for me. Unless you just want to make another chapter out of it, I'm going to stop at chapter 34. And we just have to remember as we go forward now, we've been traveling this whole time. Ever since the very beginning of Genesis, we've taken a journey, and we've taken a journey from the creation of everything, all through how God separated the waters and formed dry land, made man on the 6th day, and how he created Adam and Eve on the 8th day. And we went through the whole scenario with Cain and Abel. And then we went in, somebody came home, the dogs are barking. And then we came into to the time of Noah, and there were giants in those days. We went through all of that, and we went through how Noah built the ark and how all of the animals were brought in and how they were saved. And then we go into the Tower of Babel after Noah, and how Nimrod, the king of Babylon, was building this tower to reach heaven because they thought that they were special. They thought they were more special than God. They wanted to be as God, and they wanted a high place. So they were building this tower, and that's when God came and he saw what they were doing, and he confused their languages, and work on the tower stopped. I don't know what happened to it. I imagine over the years it was dismantled, and the brick and the block that had been made for that tower were used for something else in the area. Who knows? They may have just tore them down and used them all over the country in that area. That's what happens a lot of times with ancient ruins. They just people take what they can find and they use it to build something else rather than have to do the hard work of quarrying it and doing all that. But we have to remember that even through all that, we went from the times of Noah and we got into Abraham. He was living there in that area of Babylon, and he was told by God to leave there. And he and his father and all that they had, they left and they went to another city later named Nahor for Abraham's brother. Then Abraham went to Egypt, and he did there. He prospered there, and even though he had to deal with the Pharaoh when it came to his wife, remember she had to lie, but then as you go through, Isaac's wife also lied. Rebecca lied. So they do this to save both of their lives. So they had to tell lies and say they're my sister, even though in Abraham's case she was his half sister actually and his wife. So we go on from there and we get into Isaac. And Isaac does all these great things, and he prospers, and he has 2 sons, and we get to where we are today with Jacob and Esau. We remember that Jacob literally stole Isaac's blessing by deceiving Isaac, his father, when he was old and blind, along with his mother, Rebecca. She was the mastermind of the whole con job. They conned the old man Isaac into believing that it was Esau, and he gave him the only blessing that a Hebrew can give their son is one blessing, and it goes to the oldest child almost always. In this case, he thought that he was Esau. They had put fur from a goat on his hands and on the back of his neck. So when Esau put his hand on him, he felt the hair of his neck and the hair of his hands. And he believed, even though his voice didn't sound like Esau's, he said, but you feel like him. You have to be Esau. And so he blessed him. Then we find out Esau came in and was really upset, and Jacob fled. So Jacob went to the land of his mother and took 2 daughters as wives from his mother's brother, Laban. And he decided to leave there. Laban chased him. They made up. And now we're at Esau and Jacob when they reunite. And Jacob, it's amazing to me, he sent all that stuff forward, and Esau didn't want it. And to me, that is actually amazing. I mean, that was, I would have been like Jacob, to be honest with you. I would have recoiled probably in fear, facing 400 armed men and a brother that should want to kill you. But we didn't see that. He leaned down and he embraced him, and he fell on his neck and he kissed him, and they both wept. This was a great reunion. And that's as far as we're going to go on this one today. We're going to stop there. That's a happy place to stop. 2 brothers reunited after at least 20 years, probably a few more than that, because Jacob worked 20 years for Laban for his 2 wives and his livestock. So anyway, it's been great. I want to thank y'all for being here. It was a total success. I had many more people than I expected. I want to thank Liberty Smith and my brother Dangerous Freedom and PDX Scout and Linda Horner and the Anunnaki the One, Harmony. There's so many people here. To see if I can scroll down. I don't want to miss anybody, but I probably will. So forgive me for that. Sometimes people come in here and they watch. Philip Turner, thank you. Zach the King Ammunition 259. Jane, Philip Turner, Dangerous Freedom, my brother. And let's see, Jane again. Okay, people, I'm so glad you came. Thank you for being here. Scott Turner. I enjoy doing this. It helps me. I study this stuff, I'll be honest with you. The way I read, you'd think I've never read it before, but I read this over and over and over. I just get excited sometimes while I'm reading, and I speak faster than I can read. I'll try to slow that down in the future. But I want to thank all of you for being here, and we're going to get into some other stuff later on. It starts getting good from here on out. We've got some begats coming up here shortly, but as always, I'm going to gloss over the begats, because who needs to read 10 minutes of begat, and you never hear those names again. And if you do, well, you know where they came from anyway. So nothing that I'm going to bring to you during the book of Genesis is going to be salvation threatening, no matter what you believe and no matter what I say. You can believe me or not. I hope that you would. I hope that you'd study for yourself and search these things out. And if you disagree, that's fine. And if you don't know what to do with some of the stuff I say, then just put it on the shelf. Don't worry about it, because somewhere in the Bible on down the road, you're going to come across a situation to where that will apply. So the Old Testament reinforces the New Testament, and the New Testament reinforces the Old. So the Bible, that's why it's 2 books, but that's why it's 1 book. It's 2 books within 1 book. And then if you want to break it down into the other books of the Bible, there's more than that. But we're not going to go that deep. We're just going to try to stay in Genesis for a little while and try to get to the end. And then maybe we'll jump over to the New Testament for a couple of chapters before we start on Exodus, because Exodus, that is a a touchy subject, but it's also where God manifests himself to Moses. So we'll do all this later. I'm going to get with you next Sunday. Thank you for coming. I love you. And I'm going to say one short prayer and we'll get out of here for the day. And y'all have a great weekend. What's left of it, visit tonight at 8 p.m. Dangerous Freedom and I will be doing a Dangerous Deplorable tonight at 8 p.m. Our regular Sunday night show of Dangerous Deplorables. So come back to Deplorable Bobby channel at 8 o'clock tonight, and you'll see a couple of guys just having fun, talking about what's going on, and just being friends and showing some love to each other and everybody in the chat. Craig Akeret, thank you for being here. And PDX Scout, Linda Horner, you've been here since the very beginning. Thank you. I want to thank you for hanging around. My name's Deplorable Bobby, and this is the way I see it when it comes to the book of Genesis. So pray for me. I'll pray for you. And Lord Father, thank you again for this opportunity to come, Lord, and to be with my friends and people to share some of what you've shared with me. Go with us, Lord, and keep us safe, lead us, guide us in the way you'd have us to go. Until next week, Lord, when we meet here again, in Jesus' holy name, I pray these things. Amen. Everybody have a great day, great night, and I hope to see you tonight along with my brother Dangerous Freedom at 8 p.m. Dangerous Deplorables at 8 p.m. See you then. Y'all have a great day.